Hello, Tom Conkle here. I thought I'd do a quick live stream because I've been seeing a lot of repeats of the story where Denis Villeneuve is kind of ragging on Marvel films, saying they're cookie cutter or whatever, just as he's seeking to find an audience to support a very expensive, albeit auteur film, but one that certainly has aspirations to find a popular audience, one that can support the kind of work that he's doing that costs so much money. And there's my problem. I think any marketing plan where basically you have an artist like Martin Scorsese or Denis Villeneuve, who I love their work, but for different reasons than, say, a Marvel film. I think it's wrong to market it as these things are stupid, these things are cookie cutter, they're bland, they're this or that, or knock them down, but then at the same time, you're trying to reach out and find an audience for your piece of popular entertainment, and find that. I think it's counterproductive and it comes off inevitably snobby. And let's face it, you can enjoy things for very different reasons. It doesn't mean there isn't the same amount of craft. It doesn't mean that there isn't the same care or that you can't feel anything watching Iron Man or Thor, or any, Guardians, the Avengers, the list goes on and on. Ant-Man and Black Panther. You will find mythology there. You find heart there. That's why it resonates. If you look at any audience reaction at the middle of Endgame, you realize that long many-year arc paid off for so many people, and there's no shame in it. I own all the Marvel movies, and I even like some DC movies. Dark Knight's one of the best movies I think I've ever seen. And while I can enjoy, Denis, Blade Runner 2049 for its craft, and of course it's a sequel to a genre film, or Scorsese exploring again his same themes of crime, the morality of crime, his, actors, using the same actors, techniques that he uses in his storytelling. To say that any of that is more valid does a disservice to what we want, which is a diversity of thought, diversity of creative output. I mean, by saying, someone like Denis Villeneuve saying, hey, this other stuff is not good, it's cookie cutter, it's bad, that presupposes that all entertainment should aspire to only be his kind of entertainment. It should only aspire to this kind of more thoughtful art take on things, perhaps less accessible to some. It asks something of you, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. But Marvel movies ask something else of you. They ask you to care about these people, invite them into your lives. You feel like you know them. The Russo brothers, in particular, are on top. Of course, they're going to get criticism. When you are number one, you're going to see people knock you down, and you're going to have people, at any rate, try and find fault with what you did because you did make such an impact. You may have a film that made over $1 billion, and you can't really say, oh, that didn't resonate with anyone. It didn't mean anything. Well, yeah, maybe doesn't have the same aloof aspirations, nor did it pretend to, but it doesn't mean you don't cry in it, that you don't get a lump in your throat, that you don't care about the characters, that there's not integrity from the actors, the crew, the writers, the directors. Everybody involved in it cares about what they were making. Designing the cookie cutter is an art. Designing the mythology of Marvel movies is an art. It's valid. Just because it's populist doesn't mean it isn't valid. And I think the problem I have with somebody like Denis Villeneuve coming out just as you're building interest in Dune, why alienate any part of your audience? I never understood that. Um, it should be a very big tent when you're trying to put out a movie that costs close to $200 million to produce and advertise, and to turn around and literally have cast members from Marvel, Josh Brolin, have cast members from DC, Jason Momoa, people that bring in the audience, and to turn around and say, "Oh well, you shouldn't like that. That's beneath you. It's all bad. It's all mechanical. Not like my stuff." That's a really pretentious point of view, and I'm disappointed when someone says that, because if you're good, you just know you're good, and you just throw down and do good things. And I kind of wish he liked Marvel movies. I think I'd like him even more if Scorsese or Denis said, "You know what, I can't do them, or I don't want to do them, but I appreciate the craft of them," then I would like them more, and I would look at their art and say, well, their take on things is different. Myself as a filmmaker, I don't know that I could do a Marvel movie. I love them. I'd love to take one on because it seems like it's very much in my head, and I love that. I resonated with it. I remember seeing Iron Man the first time, and I was exhilarated, and I thought it hit every story beat right, and I felt something for the characters. I love the way it was shot. I love the themes of it. It had terrific actors, Jeff Bridges and Robert Downey Jr., and just, I feel like as a filmmaker, it's very dangerous to turn around and say, no, my stuff's good for you, and that other stuff you like, that's just beneath you. I'd love to see what other people's thoughts are on this. I certainly keep getting in my feed, like on Facebook or Twitter, over and over again, Denis Villeneuve doesn't like Marvel movies, or I remember then when Scorsese was trying to get The Irishman out there, the narrative became, oh, you shouldn't like populist things, or that's beneath you, or that's not real cinema. No, it is real. Raiders of the Lost Ark is real cinema. The first time I saw one of the Avengers movies, it was exhilarating, and I enjoyed watching it, and I've watched it many times. I mean, let's face it, sometimes if you were having a party and you wanted to watch a movie, what movie would you put on? Would you put on The Irishman, or would you throw on Thor Ragnarok, or something like that? Just asking. I think the problem for me is the narrative always seems to get hijacked now, that when a big film comes out from a auteur, and a director is often the author of the film, screenwriter. Film's made 3 times. It's written, it's shot, and then it's done in post. But that person that's overseeing all the sections of it is really the director. The screenwriter is very important. You don't have a movie without a great script, but film is a visual medium. And then in post and editing, that's where everything is shaped together. So to shape together a really great Marvel superhero movie requires the same discipline and craft as creating The Irishman, or creating The Arrival. And these are good films, and they're thoughtful films, but to denigrate the audience into thinking that they're wrong to enjoy a populist film, or a film like a Marvel movie or a DC film, is just off-putting. And I really wish they hadn't gone with that narrative. They tend to interview these, and I wonder if it's a baiting question. And I've read the original text, and he's trying to be delicate about it and saying, oh well, they're just they fit into a mold and do this, but ultimately at the end of the day, what they're saying is, that's down here, I'm up here, and I just think that's snobby. I'm a filmmaker, meat and potatoes. I've not done anything near what either Marvel or Denis or Scorsese or anyone's done. I would love to. Given the resources and the money, I will do my best to make more films and make them accessible, and the kind of movies that I would want to watch, which are just entertaining, smart. They don't insult your intelligence. There's craft. the acting, the characters, the cinematography, the music, everything is important. So when everything's firing on all thrusters, I would argue, Wrath of Khan or a Marvel movie is just as valid to enjoy and requires the same disciplines, the same caring, the same heart as creating a great piece of art. It's just your objectives are slightly different. What you're promising is slightly different. When you see something that Denis does, his gift is creating these more thoughtful, differently paced, immersive meditations on science fiction or crime or darkness or whatever he's exploring. Ditto Scorsese. But they both have tropes. They both have their own. A great artist, look at Kubrick. They're all making the same movie over and over and over again, exploring the same themes, exploring often with the same actors. And there's nothing wrong with that. It would be as absurd as saying, well, only Terminator movies and only Marvel movies are good. These other movies that just ask you to meet them halfway, though, that's not cinema. That's not as good. That's not as important. That sounds absurd. Well, it's just as absurd to say in your marketing of Dune suddenly to take this left turn and say, oh, yeah, it's okay to like those, I suppose, but they're kind of beneath us, and they're cold, and there's not feeling like my film. I think it leaves a sour taste, and I don't understand why they keep doing it. A filmmaker of the stature of Scorsese or Villeneuve does not need to knock down a movie that I like and make me feel like I'm wrong for liking it, or that it shouldn't have a place in the pantheon just because it's something they wouldn't do. If it's a bad movie and it's badly made, then, it won't get rewarded. Or if it does get rewarded, it's a blip, and you're like, I don't know why that one took off. It really wasn't well made. But if it is well made and made with a lot of heart, then don't knock it. Don't denigrate populist genre entertainment because you think what you're making is important. Because the minute you make it precious and you make it rare, it stops having that kind of accessibility that you desperately need when you're making a film. You need your audience, and you need a lot of money. If you want to just create and not have anyone else interfere and create whatever high art you want, you have to write a book, because everything else is collaborative. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with trying to create something that's adult and thoughtful and beautiful and complex. But that doesn't mean because you can't see it in something like a Marvel movie that often they are dealing with very thoughtful, heartfelt things like death, like male friendship, like mistrust of the government, like what it is to be a member of a team, like the relationships that happen between those characters and the relationships between those characters and their world not being accepted because they're different or exceptional or outcasts, or they learn something, something important, like, a kid would need to learn. You're going to learn it from, like, Doctor Strange. Don't be pompous. Don't think you're above it all. Be connected. He needed to get knocked down. These are our myths. He needed to get knocked down. He had that accident. Dr. Strange changes as a person, looks inward, and begins to worry more about others than himself. That is an important lesson. And you may say, well, it's just a Marvel movie or whatever. But yes, okay. Greek myths were just Greek myths. Roman mythology was just that. Every culture has their myths and their lessons and things you pass on to children. They don't all have to be high art. It doesn't all have to be labeled as good for you. And my feeling is auteurs make a big mistake when they start to separate themselves from a populist audience, one that could feed the coffers and allow you to create more art. Were I to create something, I would be grateful for anyone that went to go see the movie. I realize that you don't exist without an audience. You're making it for them, and that should be in your mind. You don't just go whatever you think. You have to, of course, have your own opinion. You have to make a movie that you yourself would want to see, and you try and craft it as best you can. But I think there's a real problem when someone like Martin Scorsese or Denis Villeneuve tells you you're wrong to like it, or it's wrong that those get made and rewarded. People resonate with them. They're not all bad movies. If you really look at them, even though there are tropes and there are things, there's always shadings. There's always little things that make them not cookie cutter. And certainly when Marvel movies started, there was no cookie cutter. They made the cookie cutter. The art was creating that satisfying feeling of seeing a Marvel movie, and millions and millions of people would agree with me that they felt something, and they bought the movie and they watch it again and again. And how dare someone, how dare you make me feel wrong or stupid or less or uncultured because I like what I like. I can like The Terminator and I can like Seventh Seal. Both are valid if they do what they promise to do. If a horror movie promises to scare me and it does, then it's a success. If one of these sort of higher-minded films really makes me stop and pause and think about life, or makes me have to digest it for several days, but it's not quite as accessible, that's also valid. But you can't have either or. You have to have both. And it would be I think a far smarter marketing campaign for certainly, the Dune movie, to drop this narrative right away and maybe even do some damage control. I'd say, you know what, it's sour grapes, and I understand I would not make a movie like that, he could say, but I understand that millions of people love these films, and yes, they are still filled with craft. The music, Alan Silvestri's score, all of that is valid. I mean, who would I listen to more? The soundtrack to the new Dune or Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme? I probably get more of a rush out of Alan Silvestri's work. Is one better than the other one? It's hard to say. One serves a very different reason. One is atonal, it's supposed to sound alien. It's married to the picture. It's not supposed to be enjoyed alone. The other is this sort of blood pumping leitmotif, old school, where they used to write themes for individual characters and action that would happen. And I love stuff like that. I grew up with that, with John Williams, John Barry, Jerry Goldsmith. Silvestri's tapping into that deep vein, and it required the same discipline, the same craft to create that soundtrack as it did the soundtrack to Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049, or Prisoners, or Arrival, or Dune. It's just different. And so I think I'd love to see your comments. If you agree with me, if you think I'm just being a populist idiot, I'll certainly accept that. But just, I had to say something as a guy who makes movies, as somebody who directs movies, writes movies, acts in movies, and I'm trying to make my own genre films. It's really, really hard to see someone that you admire, like Scorsese or Villeneuve, look down their nose at something that I know I like, and I'm not going to be ashamed to like. I would love to have made a great Marvel movie, one of the Marvel movies. I think there's just as much craft and discipline. It's just asking different things of the audience. And I had to say something because you see this story again and again and again the last couple of days, which brings up, oh, this is not as valid. This is not as good as mine. And I just had to say something because if you like it, it's valid. Please leave some comments. Please subscribe. I hope you enjoyed my little rant. I'm in the middle of writing something myself, which hopefully I have done the next week or so. I'm still hunting for some money to do some of my movies. I have an adventure film I want to do with Vernon Wells. I have a comedy called Meth Gator, which I really want to do. I have a science fiction project many things on the slate that I'll be talking about and announcing. Just hunting for the money here after all the craziness of last year, and hopefully I'll have some new stuff. Check out some of my older material here on the channel, or my feature, Trouble is My Business, Film Noir. I'm Tom Conkle, and I appreciate you listening. Thanks.